staple gun made a sound like a gunshot whack echoing through the empty suburban street. A violent sound that made the crows launch themselves from the telephone wires and scatter into the gray autumn sky. Arthur Blackwood didn't watch them go. He stepped back, his Italian leather shoes crunching on the dry leaves as he wiped soot and grime onto a forehead that hadn't seen a shower in 4 days. He didn't care about his ruined expensive suit or the smell of stale coffee clinging to him. He only cared about the face on the poster, a 6-year-old boy with blonde hair and missing front tooth. Missing, the bold black letters screamed, "Have you seen Leo?" A question that had haunted Arthur for 730 days of silence and police detectives, telling him to prepare for the worst. 2 years of waking up in a mansion so quiet, the silence felt heavy enough to crush his ribs. Arthur reached into his pocket for another flyer, his fingers raw and covered in blisters. He had put up 500 posters today alone and will put up 500 more tomorrow, determined to cover every inch of the city until the trees themselves whispered his son's name. He raised the staple gun again, ready to drive another nail, when a small, quiet voice behind him whispered, "Sir?" followed by a hesitant tug on his jacket hem. Arthur froze, his heart doing a painful stuttering flip. Was this it, the news he had dreaded for 2 years, or the breakthrough he had prayed for? He turned around to see not a police officer, but a little girl no older than 7, wearing a faded pink coat a size too small and hair that was a tangled mess of brown curls. She looked like she belonged in a different part of town, her face smudged with dirt as she pointed a small, shaking finger at the telephone pole, directly at the picture of Leo. Arthur knelt down on one knee, ignoring the sharp pain in his joints, trying to soften his face to look less like a deranged man and more like a father as he rasped, "Hello, did you see this poster, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice trembling as the girl nodded slowly, keeping her unblinking chestnut eyes locked on him. "Do you know who that is?" Arthur pressed gently. "That's my son, Leo Blackwood. Have you seen him?" But the girl stepped closer, smelling of rain and old wood smoke. She leaned in as if sharing a secret too big for the open air and whispered, "That's not Leo," causing Arthur to blink in confusion. "Yes, it is," Arthur said gently, his hope dying. "He went missing 2 years ago." But the girl shook her head violently and interrupted, "No, his name isn't Leo. His name is the Quiet Boy." Arthur sighed, dismissing it as a child's imagination, and stood up to leave, thanking her and telling her to run home before it got dark. He turned back to the pole, staple gun in hand, when the girl spoke again. "He hums," causing Arthur to stop dead, his hand hovering in the air. "The Quiet Boy," she said to his back. "He never talks, but at night, when the bad man is asleep, he hums the song about the spider." Arthur dropped the staple gun. It hit the sidewalk with a metallic clang, and he spun around, grabbing her shoulders with shaking hands. "The spider?" Arthur choked out. "The itsy-bitsy spider?" And the girl nodded, adding, "But he does it weird." He hums the middle part twice. Arthur felt the blood drain from his face. Leo had a stutter when he sang and repeated that exact melody, a detail never shared with the police or the public. Only Arthur and his late wife knew that detail, and now this dirty little girl on a street corner knew it too. "Where?" Arthur whispered. "Where did you hear him?" "Sir," she said, her voice barely audible over the wind. "That boy. He lives in my house." And Arthur stared at her as the street lights flickered on. If you believe a father's love can defy logic, hit subscribe right now, because Arthur Blackwood is about to find out that hope is the most dangerous thing in the world. "Your house?" Arthur repeated, and the girl pointed toward the east, toward the district, a place of boarded-up windows where the police didn't go unless they were in a convoy. "He's in the basement," she added, "with the rats." And Arthur stood up, leaving his staple gun, his flyers, and his luxury car behind without a second thought. "Take me," Arthur commanded, but the girl shrank back, whispering, "I can't. The bad man. He said if I tell, he'll put me in the hole, too." "I won't let him," Arthur promised, kneeling again. "I have money and power. I can protect you, Lucy, but I need you to be brave for me." Lucy looked at the poster of Leo one last time, nodded, and turned to start walking, with Arthur following her into the darkening city. They walked for an hour, leaving the clean suburbs for cracked pavement and the smell of rotting garbage, Arthur in a trance of rage and hope. The police had said Leo was likely dead, but the thought that he was just 5 miles away, living in a basement, made Arthur nauseous with a hot, molten fury. The police closed the case after 6 months, claiming no leads. If you think a parent should never stop looking, press the like button to show your support. "We're getting close," Lucy whispered as they stopped at a dark intersection where a man in a hooded sweatshirt blocked their path, smoking a cigarette. "You lost, paycheck." The man sneered at Arthur's suit, but Arthur didn't stop walking. He looked the man in the eye with a stare that wasn't from a CEO. It was the stare of a man walking through hell, and Arthur commanded "move" in a low, deadly voice that made the thug step aside in fear. "You're scary," Lucy whispered as they passed. "I'm a father," Arthur replied simply. "It's the same thing," as they turned down a narrow alleyway. "There," Lucy said, pointing to a rotting carcass of a building held together by mold and ivy, with boarded-up windows and a heavy padlock on the front door. "He's in the basement," Lucy explained. "The entrance is round the back," and Arthur imagined his terrified son living in that darkness for 2 years. Arthur felt tears stinging his eyes, but wiped them away. This wasn't the time to cry. It was the time to act, so he asked, "Where is the bad man?" "He works at the scrapyard and comes home late," Lucy said. So Arthur waded through waist-high weeds to the back of the house where he found the storm cellar. The slanted metal doors were rusted and padlocked. Arthur fell to his knees in the mud, pulling the handle, but it was locked tight. He put his ear against the cold metal and whispered, "Leo?" But silence answered him, and doubt began to creep in. Was this all a cruel trick? "You won't answer," Lucy said from behind him. "He's scared. He thinks it's a trick because the bad man tricks him sometimes." Arthur stood up, looked around for a tool, and found a heavy rusted iron pipe lying near the foundation. He picked it up, feeling its weight. "Lucy, go stand by the alley," he ordered. "If you see anyone," but she stayed, watching the man who was about to break into a monster's lair. She knew the bad man was a monster, but Arthur didn't care. "Would you risk your life for a chance to see your child again?" Arthur raised the iron pipe clang, bringing it down on the padlock, the sound ringing out like a bell in the quiet alley. The lock didn't break, so he swung again, clang grunting with effort as blisters burst and blood slicked his palms. The metal hasp bent, the wood splintered, and Arthur roared, channeling 2 years of grief and anger into a single swing crack. The hasp tore free, the lock fell into the mud, and Arthur dropped the pipe, panting, his breath coming in white clouds. He grabbed the handle, pulled the groaning metal door open, and stared down into absolute darkness that smelled of damp earth and despair. Arthur clicked his phone flashlight on, the beam cutting through the gloom as he took a step down, calling out, "Leo?" He descended the concrete stairs, his heart beating loud in his ears, until he reached the dirt floor and swept the light across the room. Old boxes, broken furniture, and a pile of rags in the corner that suddenly stirred, freezing Arthur in place. A small head poked out from the blankets, a boy with long matted hair and a filthy face, but Arthur knew those blue eyes instantly. "Leo?" Arthur choked out, falling to his knees. "Leo, buddy." "It's me." "It's Daddy," but the boy didn't move or smile. He just stared with a blank, terrified expression, pressing his back against the cold stone wall as Arthur wept. "It's okay. I found you." He reached out to touch his son's face when he heard it. A C-I-C-K, the unmistakable sound of a hammer being pulled back on a gun. Arthur froze. The sound hadn't come from the boy, but from the top of the stairs behind him. "You really shouldn't have broken my lock," a deep, raspy voice said. "Now I have to fix it, and I hate fixing things." Arthur turned his head slowly to see a huge man silhouetted in the doorway, holding a shotgun, with Lucy crying beside him. "I'm sorry," Lucy sobbed. He came home early, leaving Arthur trapped, unarmed, and in a basement nobody knew about. He opened the door to hell, and now he's trapped inside. Hit the bell icon right now so you don't miss part 2, because Arthur isn't going to die on his knees. The man took a step down, the stairs creaking under his weight, and commanded, "Step away from the boy." Arthur stood up slowly, wiped the blood from his hands onto his trousers, and looked back at his son one last time. Leo looked up, and for the first time, his lips moved. He started to hum the Itsy Bitsy Spider. He repeated the middle part twice, confirming everything, and Arthur smiled a dangerous, terrifying smile. He turned back to the man with the gun and said firmly, "No." The man laughed. "I have a shotgun, rich boy. You have a flashlight. What are you going to do?" Arthur clicked off the flashlight, plunging the basement into total pitch darkness. "I'm going to introduce you to the dark," Arthur's voice echoed from the blackness. "Darkness isn't empty. It has weight. It presses against your eyes, tricking your brain into seeing things that aren't there. But for Arthur Blackwood, the darkness was a weapon. For 2 seconds, the basement was silent. The kind of silence that happens right before a car crash. The bad man, let's call him the monster, was at the top of the stairs, blinded by the sudden loss of light. Arthur was at the bottom, his heart hammering a war drum against his ribs. "You think you're smart?" The monster growled from the blackness. The sound of his heavy boots hit the first wooden step. "Krieg, I know this basement better than you know your own name, rich boy." Arthur didn't answer. He was moving. He dropped to a crouch, feeling the dirt floor with his bleeding hands. His fingers brushed against a pile of rags where Leo was huddled. He grabbed his son's arm. Leo flinched, letting out a sharp gasp. "She," Arthur whispered, so low it was barely a breath. "Stay down. Don't move." He pushed Leo back into the corner. Then Arthur moved. He didn't move away from the stairs. He moved toward them. He felt around on the floor until his hand closed around the cold, rusted iron pipe he had used to break the lock. It was heavy. It felt like Judgment Day. Cree! Another step. The monster was coming down. "I'm going to blow your legs off first," the monster taunted. "Then I'm going to make the girl watch. If you want to see Arthur make this monster pay for every single second of pain he caused, smash that like button right now. Let's show him that evil doesn't win tonight." Arthur counted the steps. 1, 2, 3. He judged the distance by the sound of the breathing of wet, raspy wheeze coming from the darkness above him. Arthur stood up. He tightened his grip on the pipe. He didn't scream. He didn't warn him. He swung. Crack. The pipe connected with something soft and hard at the same time, a kneecap. The monster roared. It was a sound of pure animal agony. The shotgun went off, boom. The muzzle flashed, lighting up the basement like a strobe light for a split second. In that flash, Arthur saw it all. The rotting walls. Lucy screaming with her hands over her ears. Leo curled into a ball. And the massive, hulking figure of the man falling forward. The darkness returned instantly, but now it was filled with chaos. The monster crashed down the stairs, tumbling into the dirt. The shotgun skittered across the floor. Arthur didn't wait. He jumped. He landed on top of the man. It wasn't a fight. It was a brawl. Arthur Blackwood, the CEO who wore three-piece suits, was now an animal clawing for survival. He punched, he bit, he gouged. The monster was stronger than Arthur. He smelled of stale beer and old sweat. He grabbed Arthur's throat with a hand the size of a shovel. "I'm gonna kill you." The man sputtered, spitting blood. Arthur's vision started to spot. He couldn't breathe. The pressure on his windpipe was crushing. He flailed his hand, searching for a weapon. A rock. The pipe. Anything. His fingers brushed against the broken padlock on the floor. He grabbed it. With the last ounce of oxygen in his lungs, Arthur swung the heavy brass lock down into the man's face. Thud. The grip loosened. Thud. The man went limp. Arthur rolled off him, gasping for air, coughing violently. His throat felt like it was filled with broken glass. He didn't check if the man was dead. He didn't care. "Lucy," Arthur rasped. "Flashlight. Phone." A beam of light cut through the dust. Lucy was holding Arthur's phone, her hand shaking so hard the light danced on the walls. Is he dead?" she whispered. "Doesn't matter," Arthur wheezed. He scrambled over to the corner. Leo. He shone the light on his son. Leo was staring at the unconscious man. He wasn't crying. He was rocking back and forth, humming the spider song. Louder now. Down came the rain. Down came the rain. Arthur scooped him up. Leo was light, too light. He felt like a bird made of hollow bones. I got you, Arthur cried, hugging him tight. I got you. He turned to Lucy. Grab my coat. We're leaving. They ran up the stairs. Arthur carried Leo in one arm, gripping Lucy's hand with the other. They stepped over the body of the monster. They burst out into the cold night air of the alley. Arthur wanted to scream for help. He wanted to collapse, but he couldn't. Where is his car? Arthur asked Lucy. The monster's car? Around front, Lucy said. An old van. We can't use it, Arthur said. You might have keys on him, but I'm not going back down there. We run. They ran. Arthur Blackwood ran in his ruined Italian shoes, carrying a 6-year-old boy, dragging a 7-year-old girl through the darkest slums of the city. His lungs burned. His legs felt like lead. But he didn't stop. Suddenly, headlights swept across the alley entrance. A black truck pulled up slowly. It wasn't the police. It had tinted windows. It looked menacing. 2 men got out. They looked like the monster, rough, heavy, dangerous. They were looking at the house. His friends, Lucy whispered, pulling Arthur back into the shadows. The scrapyard men. They come on Fridays. Arthur checked his watch. It was Friday. They were trapped. The alley was a dead end. The monster's friends were blocking the exit. Arthur looked at the fence behind him. Chain link. 8 feet high. Topped with razor wire. Impossible. We have to hide, Arthur whispered. He saw a dumpster. It was overflowing with trash, smelling of rot. In there, Arthur pointed. Ooh, Lucy whimpered. Lucy, Arthur said, looking her in the eyes. It's the dumpster or the men. Choose. She chose. Arthur lifted Lucy in. Then he climbed in with Leo. He pulled a heavy black garbage bag over them, just as the footsteps echoed in the alley. Hey, Marco, one of the men yelled. Why's the door open? Arthur held his breath. He put his hand over Leo's mouth gently. Leo was vibrating with fear. The footsteps got closer. They stopped right next to the dumpster. Arthur could smell the cigarette smoke. He could hear the click of a lighter. Maybe he's drunk again, the second man laughed. Let's check the basement. They walked away, toward the house. Arthur counted to 10. Go, he whispered. They scrambled out of the dumpster, covered in slime and coffee grounds. They ran in the opposite direction, away from the house, deeper into the maze of the district. This is the reality of a parent's worst nightmare. Arthur is fighting for his life, covered in filth, just to keep his boy safe. If you are rooting for them to make it out, subscribe to the channel right now. We need all the prayers we can get. They ran for 20 minutes until the building started to change. The broken windows were replaced by intact ones. The street lights actually worked. They reached the main road. A gas station shone like a beacon of hope in the distance. Open 24 hours. Arthur stumbled through the glass doors. The attendant, a teenager with headphones around his neck, looked up. His eyes went wide. He saw a man in a shredded suit, covered in blood and garbage, holding 2 terrified, filthy children. Call 911, Arthur ordered. His voice was gone. He sounded like a demon. Now. The kid didn't ask questions. He grabbed the phone. Arthur collapsed onto the linoleum floor. He pulled Leo and Lucy into his lap. It's over, he whispered, rocking them. It's over. But as the adrenaline faded, the reality set in. Arthur looked at his son in the fluorescent light at the gas station. Really looked at him for the first time in 2 years. Leo's skin was gray. There were scars on his arms, cigarette burns, scratches. His clothes were rags. And his eyes. Those blue eyes were empty. He was looking through Arthur, not at him. He was still humming, softly, endlessly. Arthur felt a grief so profound it almost buckled his knees. He had found his son, but he hadn't found the boy he lost. That boy, the happy, laughing Leo, was gone. What did they do to you? Arthur wept, stroking Leo's matted hair. Oh God, Leo, what did they do? If seeing an innocent child hurt like this breaks your heart, leave a comment below saying justice for Leo. We are going to make sure the people who did this pay. Sirens wailed in the distance. Blue and red lights flashed against the gas station windows. Police, ambulance, safety. The paramedics rushed in. They tried to take Leo from Arthur's arms. No, Arthur roared, tightening his grip. He stays with me. Nobody touches him. Sir, he needs medical attention, a paramedic said gently. You're in shock. I'm his father, Arthur yelled. I am his father. It took 3 officers to calm him down. Finally, they allowed Arthur to ride in the ambulance. Leo strapped to the gurney, holding Arthur's hand with a grip that turned his knuckles white. Lucy sat on the bench opposite them, wrapped in a foil blanket, drinking a juice box. She looked small. Survivors always look small after the war is over. They arrived at St. Jude's Hospital. The chaos of the EA swallowed them. Doctors, nurses, questions, needles, lights. Arthur refused to leave the room. He refused to let go of Leo's hand. A detective came in. Detective Miller, he looked tired. Mr. Blackwood, Miller said, notebook in hand. We found the house. We found the man in the basement. He's in critical condition. You did a number on him. Is he dead? Arthur asked coldly. No, but he's in a coma. We identified him. His name is Silas Vane. He's a known trafficker. But here's the thing, Mr. Blackwood. The detective lowered his voice. The basement was empty, except for Vane. Arthur frowned. What? The other men. The truck you saw. They cleaned it out before we got there. Vane is just a muscle. He's not the boss. Arthur felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. So the people who ordered this, they're still out there. We think so, Miller said. And if they know you have the boy and the girl, they might come back. Arthur looked at Leo, sleeping sedated in the hospital bed. He looked at the scars on his son's arms. The fear in Arthur's heart evaporated. It was replaced by something else, something cold, something sharp, rage. Arthur stood up. He walked over to the detective. Let them come, Arthur said. Excuse me? Let them come, Arthur repeated. I spent 2 years looking for my son with flyers and staples. I played by the rules. I trusted the police. And my son lived in a basement with rats. Arthur leaned in close. I'm done playing by the rules. If they come for my family again, detective, you won't need handcuffs. You'll need body bags. He turned back to his son. He took out his phone. He dialed a number. Stone, Arthur said when his lawyer answered. Liquidate my assets. I need cash. I need security. I need the best private mercenaries money can buy. Arthur? What's going on? War, Arthur said. I'm starting a war. Arthur Blackwood has found his son, but the nightmare isn't over. The people who took Leo are powerful, and they are still out there. If you want to see Arthur go John Wick on these criminals and burn their empire to the ground, hit that notification bell. You do not want to miss the next episode. Hospitals are supposed to be places of healing. But to Arthur Blackwood, sitting in the dim light of room 402, it felt like a purgatory of beeping machines and antiseptic smells. It had been 3 days. 3 days since he pulled his son out of the dark. Leo was physically safe. The doctors had treated the malnutrition, the dehydration, the infected cuts on his feet. His body was healing, but his mind? That was a different battlefield. Leo hadn't spoken a single word. Not dad, not hungry, not hurt. He just sat in the hospital bed, staring at the wall, his knees pulled up to his chest. Occasionally, he would rock back and forth. Occasionally, he would hum that terrifying, broken version of the Itsy Bitsy Spider. Arthur sat in the chair next to the bed, his hand resting near Leo's, but not touching him. He had learned the hard way that touching Leo without warning made the boy scream. A scream so silent and terrified it shattered Arthur's soul. Mr. Blackwood? Arthur looked up. Dr. Evans, a pediatric psychiatrist, stood in the doorway. She looked sympathetic. Arthur hated sympathy. Sympathy didn't fix things. "We've done the evaluation," Dr. Evans said softly, stepping inside. "Leo is suffering from severe selective mutism induced by trauma. He has dissociated from reality to protect himself. In his mind, he is still in the basement. How do I bring him back?" Arthur asked. His voice was hoarse. "Time," she said. "Patience. Safety. He needs to know, deep in his subconscious, that the threat is gone. But Arthur, you need to prepare yourself. He may never be the boy he was before." Arthur looked at his son. He remembered the Leo who used to run around the garden with a cape, pretending to be Superman. "I don't need him to be the boy he was," Arthur whispered. "I just need him to know he's loved. If you have ever had to watch a loved one suffer in silence and felt completely helpless, you know this pain. Leave in the comments to send some love to Leo. He needs all the positive energy he can get." "And the girl?" Arthur asked. "Lucy?" "She's resilient." Dr. Evans managed a small smile. "She's eating everything in the cafeteria. But she refuses to sleep unless she's in the same room as Leo. She thinks she's his protector." Arthur nodded. "She is." He stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He looked like the CEO again, but his eyes were cold steel. "I'm taking them home. Mr. Blackwood, I strongly advise against discharging them so early." "I'm not asking for permission, doctor," Arthur cut her off. "This hospital has public entrances. It has janitors I haven't vetted. It has security guards who make $15 an hour. It is not safe." Arthur pulled out his phone. "My team is outside. We are leaving." The drive to the Blackwood estate was a military operation. Arthur didn't take his Mercedes. He was in the back of an armored SUV, flanked by two other vehicles filled with private security contractors. These weren't mall cops. These were ex-SAS, ex-Navy SEALs. Men who charged $1,000 a day and didn't ask questions. They drove through the iron gates of the estate. The mansion sat on a hill, overlooking the city. It used to be a home. Now it was a fortress. Floodlights swept the grounds. Motion sensors were active. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter with German shepherds. Arthur carried Leo into the house. Lucy walked beside him, her eyes wide as she looked at the marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, the grand staircase. "Is this a castle?" she whispered. "It is now," Arthur said. He took them to the master suite. He had moved 2 beds into his own room. He wasn't letting them sleep down the hall. Not yet, not ever. He tucked Leo in. He gave Lucy a pile of blankets on her bed. She didn't like sheets. She liked to build a nest. Arthur sat in the armchair by the door. He placed a Glock 19 on the table beside him. He watched them sleep. He waited because he knew the war wasn't over. It had just moved locations. The next morning, the sun didn't bring relief. It brought questions. Arthur sat in his study. Across the desk sat Stone, his lawyer, and Kane, the head of his new security detail. Kane was a man made of scars and muscle. "We have a name on the truck," Kane said, sliding a tablet across the desk. "The one you saw in the alley. It belongs to a shell company registered to a salvage yard in the district. Ironworks Recycling. The scrap yard," Arthur said, remembering what Lucy had said. "The bad man works at the scrap yard." "We did some digging," Stone added, looking nervous. "Ironworks is the front. It's owned by the Voyevy Zakon. The Russian mob." Arthur didn't blink. "Russians. Not just any Russians," Kane said grimly. "This is the Volkov family. They deal in stolen cars, weapons, and people. Silas Vane, the guy you put in a coma, he was just a middleman, a handler." "Who is the head?" Arthur asked. "Dmitry Volkov," Kane said. "He runs the city's underworld from the penthouse of the Onyx Club. He's untouchable, Arthur. The police are on his payroll. The judges enter through his back door. If you go after him, you are declaring war on the devil himself." Arthur stood up. He walked to the window. He looked out at the garden where Leo used to play. Now, It was patrolled by men with assault rifles. My son lived in a hole for 2 years, Arthur said softly. Do you think I care about the devil? He turned back to Cain. I want to send a message. What kind of message? The kind they can't ignore, Arthur said. Volkov thinks he's untouchable because he has money and fear. I have money too, and I have nothing left to lose. Arthur leaned over the desk. Tonight, we hit the scrapyard. Arthur, Stone pleaded. This is vigilante justice. If you get caught, I won't get caught, Arthur said. Because I'm not going there to arrest anyone. I'm going there to burn it down. Do you think Arthur is going too far? Or is this exactly what a father should do? If you would burn the world down for your child, hit that subscribe button. Let's ride with Arthur into the fire. Night fell over the district like a shroud. The ironworks scrapyard was a maze of rusted metal, crushed cars, and towering cranes. It was dark, illuminated only by a few floodlights and the burning barrels where the guards warmed their hands. Arthur lay on a ridge overlooking the yard. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing tactical black gear. He wasn't holding a stapler. He was holding a suppressed AR-15. Next to him lay Cain and 4 of his best men. Target confirmation, Cain whispered into his comms. 12 hostiles, armed. They're moving crates into the main warehouse. What's in the crates? Arthur asked. Cain adjusted his thermal scope. Heat signatures. Small ones, Arthur froze. Small heat signatures. Children. They weren't just moving car parts. They were moving product. They were moving kids. The rage that exploded in Arthur's chest was blinding. He thought he was just hitting a money laundering operation. He didn't know he was walking into an active trafficking hub. We changed the plan, Arthur hissed. We don't burn it. We clear it. Arthur, that's suicide, Cain warned. We are outnumbered 2-1. I don't care, Arthur said, standing up. Look at the thermal. Those are kids. Just like Leo. He looked at Cain. You have kids, Cain? Cain hesitated. Yeah, 2 daughters. Imagine them in those crates, Arthur said. Cain's jaw tightened. He clicked the safety off his rifle. All right, Cain said into the radio. Boys, rules of engagement have changed. No prisoners. We are executing a rescue. On my mark, Arthur felt the cold metal of the rifle against his cheek. He wasn't a soldier. He had never fired a gun in anger before today. But the image of Leo in that basement was overlaying everything he saw. Every guard down there was Silas Vane. Every guard was the monster. Mark, Cain whispered. Theft. 2 shots. 2 guards by the gate dropped silently. Arthur moved. He ran down the ridge, following Cain's team. They moved like ghosts through the maze of crushed cars. They reached the warehouse. Arthur could hear voices inside, rushing, laughing, and the sound of crying. Cain kicked the door open. Federal agents! Get down! Cain screamed aloud to confuse them. Chaos erupted. The Russians grabbed their AK-47s. Bullets tore through the sheet metal walls. Arthur ducked behind a forklift. He saw a man raising a gun toward Cain. Arthur didn't think. He squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against his shoulder. The man fell. Arthur stared at his hands. He had just killed a man. He expected to feel horror. He expected to feel sick. He felt nothing, only focus. Clear right, clear left. The firefight lasted 3 minutes. It felt like 3 hours. When the smoke cleared, 8 men were down. The rest had fled out the back. Arthur ran to the crates. He used a crowbar to pry the first one open. Inside, huddled together, were 3 children. Terrified, filthy, just like Leo. Arthur dropped the crowbar. He fell to his knees. It's okay, he choked out, pulling the first child, a boy, into his arms. You're safe. You're safe. Sirens wailed in the distance. Real police this time. Or maybe corrupt ones. We have to go, Arthur. Cain yelled, grabbing his arm. We can't be here when the cops show up. We leave the kids for the police. They're safe now. But we have to vanish. I can't leave them, Arthur shouted. You have to. If you get arrested, who protects Leo? Who protects Lucy? Arthur looked at the kids. He looked at the flashing lights approaching. Kane was right. He couldn't help them if he was in handcuffs. He squeezed the boy's shoulder. "Stay here," Arthur commanded. "The police are coming. They will take you home." "Be brave." Arthur stood up. He ran. They slipped out through the back fence, disappearing into the shadows just as the first cruiser skidded into the yard. Back in the armored SUV, speeding away, Arthur sat in silence. He was covered in sweat and grime. He smelled of gunpowder. His phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Arthur stared at it. He answered. "Who is this?" A voice, smooth and cold like vodka on ice, answered. "Mr. Blackwood, you have been a very busy man tonight." It was Volkov. "You took something of mine," Volkov said calmly. "My scrapyard, my merchandise." "It is very rude. I'm coming for you next," Arthur said, his voice trembling with adrenaline. Volkov laughed. A low, dark sound. "No, Arthur. You are not coming for me. You should look out your window." "What?" "I know where you live," Volkov whispered. "I know about the fortress. And I know about the little girl Lucy. She has a big mouth, that one. She told Silas many things before you arrived." Arthur's blood ran cold. "You think you are playing a game?" Volkov continued. "You think because you hired some soldiers you are safe? I have an army, Arthur, and tonight we are coming to visit." The line went dead. Arthur screamed at the driver. "Drive! Drive faster!" he called home. "Lucy? Leo?" No answer. He checked the security feed on his phone. The cameras at the gate were offline. The screen was black. Arthur Blackwood just started a war he might not be able to win. Volkov is coming for the kids, and the security is down. If you are on the edge of your seat, hit that like button. We need to get Arthur home now. The lights didn't flicker. They died. 1 second, the Blackwood mansion was a beacon of safety on the hill. The next, it was a tomb swallowed by the night. Inside the master bedroom, Lucy's eyes snapped open. She didn't scream. Street kids don't scream when the dark comes. They hide. She sat up in her nest of blankets, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She looked over at the other bed. Leo was asleep or pretending to be. Then she heard it. Glass breaking downstairs. Not a clumsy break. A calculated one. The sound of a diamond cutter slicing through a window pane, followed by the soft crunch of boots on marble. Lucy scrambled out of bed. She ran to Leo and clamped her hand over his mouth. His eyes flew open, wide and terrified in the moonlight filtering through the curtains. "They're here," Lucy whispered, her voice barely a thread. "The bad man's friends. We have to move." She didn't run for the door. She ran for the closet. Arthur had shown her the hidden panel in the back, the safe room he had installed yesterday. She dragged Leo inside. It was tight, smelling of cedar and Arthur's suits. She slid the panel shut, leaving a tiny crack to see through. She held Leo tight. He started to hum. "The spider song." "No," Lucy hissed, tears streaming down her face. "Not now, Leo. You have to be quiet. Please." Downstairs, the front door was blown off its hinges. Dmitri Volkov stepped into the foyer. He was wearing a white trench coat that looked like a ghost in the darkness. He held a silenced pistol. Behind him were 4 men professionals, moving with military precision. They stepped over the bodies of Arthur's security guards, who had been taken out by snipers before the power was cut. "Find them?" Volkov whispered. "The boy is worth $5 million on the market. The girl, she is just a loose end. Dispose of her. If your heart is racing right now, and you are praying for these kids to survive, hit that like button. We need a miracle, and we need it fast." 5 miles away, Arthur Blackwood was driving a 3-ton armored SUV like it was a Ferrari. He was screaming into his phone. "Kane! Report! Kane!" Static. Just static. The jamming signal was active. Volkov had cut all communications. Arthur threw the phone against the dashboard. He looked at the speedometer. 110 miles per hour. He visualized the map. 2 minutes out. Hold on, he whispered to the empty car. Daddy's coming. Just hold on. Back in the closet, Lucy held her breath. The bedroom door handle turned slowly. Click. The door pushed open. A flashlight beam swept the room. It danced over the empty beds. It lingered on the messy blankets. Clear, a voice growled. They must be hiding. The man stepped into the room. He walked toward the closet. Lucy squeezed her eyes shut. She felt Leo trembling against her. The footsteps stopped right in front of the panel. Lucy saw the boots through the crack. Heavy, black, muddy. The man reached for the closet handle. Suddenly a roar echoed from outside. A sound like thunder. Crash. Arthur's SUV didn't stop at the iron gates. It smashed through them, sending twisted metal flying into the air. He didn't stop at the driveway. He drove the armored vehicle straight through the front doors of the mansion, burying the hood in the grand staircase. The house shook. Dust and debris exploded everywhere. The man in the bedroom froze. What was that? Arthur stumbled out of the wrecked car. Airbag dust clouded his vision. His head was bleeding. He didn't check for injuries. He grabbed the assault rifle from the passenger seat. Volkov! Arthur screamed. The sound was primal. It wasn't a human voice. It was the roar of a wounded lion. I'm home. Gunfire erupted from the balcony above. Bullets pinned off the armored car door Arthur was using as a shield. He returned fire. Pop, pop, pop. One of Volkov's men fell from the chandelier, crashing onto the marble floor. Arthur moved. He knew this house. He knew every shadow, every corner. He flanked left, through the dining room. 2 men were coming down the servants' stairs. Arthur didn't hesitate. He shot through the drywall. He heard bodies hit the floor. He ran up the back stairs, 2 at a time. His lungs were burning. His vision was tunneling. The bedroom. They'll be in the bedroom. He reached the landing, and then he stopped. Dmitry Volkov was standing at the end of the hallway, right in front of the master bedroom door. He wasn't holding a gun. He was holding Lucy. He had dragged her out of the closet. His arm was wrapped around her neck, lifting her off her feet. With his other hand, he pointed a gold-plated pistol at Leo, who was cowering on the floor. "Drop it, Arthur," Volkov said calmly, "or I paint your walls with his brains." Arthur froze. The rifle felt heavy in his hands. He looked at Lucy. Her face was turning purple. She was clawing at Volkov's arm. He looked at Leo. Leo was rocking back and forth, eyes wide, looking at his father. "Put the gun down," Volkov commanded. "Kick it to me." Arthur slowly lowered the rifle. He placed it on the floor. He kicked it. It slid down the hallway. "Let them go, Dmitri," Arthur said, holding his hands up. "This is between us. You want money? I have millions in the safe. Take it." "I have money," Volkov sneered. "This is about respect. You embarrassed me, Arthur. You stole from me. Now I take everything from you." Volkov cocked the hammer of the pistol. He aimed it squarely at Leo's forehead. "Say goodbye to your son." Arthur's heart stopped. He calculated the distance. 20 feet. Too far. He was going to watch his son die. After everything, after the posters, the basement, the scrapyard, it was going to end here. Do not look away. This is the moment that decides everything. If you believe good can triumph over evil, hit that subscribe button right now. Arthur needs your strength. Suddenly, a sound cut through the tension. Humming. But it wasn't the spider song. It wasn't the itsy-bitsy spider. Leo stood up. He stopped rocking. He looked at Volkov, and he started to hum a different tune, a low, haunting melody. "Rock-a-bye, baby." On the treetop, Volkov frowned. "Shut up, boy," Leo hummed louder. He took a step toward Volkov. It was the lullaby Arthur's wife used to sing, the one she sang to Leo every night before she died. Volkov was confused. For a split second, his eyes flickered from Arthur to the strange, humming boy walking toward him. That split second was all Lucy needed. She stopped clawing at Volkov's arm. She reached into her pocket. She pulled out the only thing she had, a staple gun. The one Arthur had dropped on the street 3 days ago. She had kept it. She jammed the cold metal against Volkov's hand, the one holding the gun. Thwack! She fired a staple directly into his knuckles. Volkov screamed. His hand spasmed. The gold pistol dropped to the floor. "Now, Arthur," Lucy screamed, biting Volkov's arm. Arthur didn't run. He launched himself. He hit Volkov like a freight train. They crashed through the bedroom door, tumbling into the room. Arthur was on top of him instantly. He didn't use technique. He used rage. He punched Volkov. Again, and again, and again. Every punch was for a missing poster. Every punch was for a night Leo spent in the cold. Every punch was for Lucy's fear. Volkov tried to reach for his backup knife. Arthur grabbed his wrist. He snapped it. Arthur wrapped his hands around Volkov's throat. "You touched my family," Arthur hissed, his face inches from the Russians. "You touched my family." Volkov's eyes rolled back. He gasped for air. Arthur squeezed tighter. He was going to kill him. He was going to end it right here. "Dad?" The word was soft. It was cracked and rusty, like a door that hadn't been opened in years. Arthur froze. His hands loosened on Volkov's throat. He turned his head slowly. Leo was standing there. He wasn't humming. He was looking at Arthur. "Dad," Leo whispered. "Stop." Arthur looked at his hands. They were wrapped around a man's neck. He looked at his son. Leo didn't need a killer. He needed a father. Arthur let go. Volkov gasped, coughing, trying to crawl away. Arthur stood up. He kicked Volkov in the ribs, flipping him over. "You're lucky," Arthur said, panting. "You're so lucky." Sirens wailed in the distance. This time, they sounded like victory. Arthur walked over to Leo. He fell to his knees. "You spoke," Arthur wept. "You spoke." Leo didn't say anything else. He just stepped forward and wrapped his small arms around Arthur's neck. Arthur buried his face in his son's shoulder. Then he felt another pair of arms. Lucy. He pulled her in too. The three of them sat on the floor of the ruined bedroom, surrounded by drywall dust and broken glass, holding on to each other while the flashing blue lights of the police cars illuminated the walls. The war was over. 6 months later, the grass in the park was green. Not the dull gray of the city, but a vibrant, living green. Arthur sat on a bench. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. He looked younger. The dark circles were gone. "Higher! Push me higher!" Arthur smiled. He watched Lucy swinging on the swing set, her legs kicking at the sky. She was wearing a new pink coat one that actually fit. She was laughing, a sound that was pure sunshine. And next to her on the slide was Leo. He wasn't humming. He was talking to a golden retriever that had wandered over. "You're a good boy," Leo said to the dog. "Do you want to play?" Arthur took a deep breath. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and hope. He looked at the newspaper on the bench next to him. Crime boss Dmitry Volkov sentenced to life. Human trafficking ring smashed. Arthur folded the paper. He didn't need to read it. He had been there when the judge banged the gavel. Gad! Arthur looked up. Leo was running toward him, holding a stick. "Look! It's a sword!" "That's a mighty fine sword," Arthur said, grabbing him and tickling his ribs. "Careful, or I'll defeat you." Leo giggled. "I surrender." Arthur laughed. "I surrender." Lucy jumped off the swing and ran over, tackling them both into a hug. "Family pile on!" she shouted. Arthur lay back on the grass, looking up at the blue sky. He thought about the stapler. He thought about the basement. He thought about the night he almost lost everything. He had started with a poster of a missing boy. He ended with a daughter, a son, and a life he didn't know he needed. He realized then that he wasn't the one who saved him. They had saved him. He looked directly at you, the viewer. "Never give up," Arthur whispered. "Even when the lights go out, never give up." If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of second chances, please like, subscribe, and share this video. And tell me in the comments, what is the one thing you would fight the whole world for? Thanks for watching. And remember, The darkness is only scary until you turn on the light.